There is a mistake that millions of men make every day, and most don't even realize it. A silent, almost invisible mistake that destroys their confidence, drives women away, and silently sabotages any possibility of true connection. It's not about what you say or do, but what you emotionally expect to happen. This mistake is to live in dependence on external approval. It's believing that you need something or someone to feel complete. And the problem with this is that the moment you need to be validated by someone, you put yourself at a disadvantage. You surrender your emotional power. For the Stoics, the center of life is within oneself, never outside. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And if your thoughts revolve around pleasing others to feel enough, you've lost control over yourself. This loss of control is what makes so many men invisible to women's eyes. They are not attracted by necessity, but by presence. Not out of desperate effort, but out of quiet self-confidence. And it all starts by eliminating this invisible mistake, living in search of someone's approval. True transformation doesn't start with changing what you do. It starts by changing who you are internally. When you master this, the external world, including women, begins to perceive you differently. Not as someone who seeks something, but as someone who is already all they need to be. Stop now and ask yourself, are you living like a centered man? Or are you, without realizing it, handing your self-esteem into the hands of those who barely know you? A sincere answer to this question can change the course of your life. Most men believe that winning someone over involves impressing with phrases, attitudes, or even appearances. But what no one tells you is that the more you try to get noticed, the less authentic you look. And this not only alienates women, but also erodes their own identity. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the greatest strength lies in not having to prove anything. Gato, one of the most admired Stoics, was known for his austerity and steadfast presence. He didn't use words to impress, his conduct spoke louder. This is the kind of presence that really attracts. When a man walks into an environment trying to be the funniest, most interesting, or most likable, he reveals, without realizing it, that he doubts his own worth. And this is the smell that drives away the most, that of insecurity disguised as charisma. Women intuitively perceive this. They sense when a man is acting to please, and just as the Stoic deals with his inner impulses, the woman deals with the invisible signs of a man who is not at peace with himself. The key here is simple. Stop trying to be interesting and start being interested in yourself. Cultivate your mission, your values, your inner world. A truly magnetic man doesn't make an effort to get attention. He simply lives consistently with what he believes. And this is the invisible game. The men who do not try to impress are the ones who impress the most. Because there is nothing rarer and more seductive than someone who lives in peace with who they are. Society trains men from an early age to seek recognition, good grades, good jobs, compliments, love, conquests. But Stoicism turns this logic on its head. It says that nothing external is necessary for you to feel complete. And when you understand that, something changes profoundly. Men who do not seek approval possess a silent power. They enter any environment without the need to prove themselves. They are not there to please, but they are not arrogant either. They are simply present with firmness and serenity. This type of energy is rare, and that's why it's so magnetic. When you don't need a woman's attention, you naturally become more mysterious, more interesting, more confident. It is as if your value is stored in an internal safe that only you have the key to. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste any more time arguing about what a good man is. Be one. The search for approval distracts you from being that man. It traps you in a cycle of anxiety, where every action is measured by how much others will react. But when you break that cycle, everything changes. You start to act out of conviction, not reaction. You become a man whose presence communicates strength without having to raise your voice. A man who feels comfortable in his own silence. And the most powerful truth is this: the men who don't need to be noticed are the very ones who never go unnoticed. Genuine desire, as the Stoics explained, cannot be provoked by force, but cultivated by the absence of need. When you desire something too much, you cling, and that attachment is what causes suffering. The same goes for the field of seduction. Epictetus said, "If you want to be invincible, don't engage in combat with what's out of your control." Female desire is just that, something you can't control. Trying to force it is like trying to control the wind with your hands. The more you try to win over someone who isn't ready to want you yet, the more you show emotional dependence. And what is dependent is disposable. Female desire arises from the perception of value, and value is not proven, it is felt. Stoic men, instead of chasing, cultivated a state of presence so strong that the universe itself seemed to gravitate around them. They knew that desire comes from an inner space of calm and detachment. When you let go of craving, you gain power. And not an aggressive power, but the tranquil power of those who are at peace with their own existence. This type of man becomes rare, and therefore so desired. So the question is, do you want to conquer by insistence, or by the natural magnetism that is born from your tranquility? The first requires constant effort. The second, only self-control. Nothing repels more than despair disguised as attention. The man who sends message after message, who reacts immediately to any gesture, who lives for a woman, he is, without realizing it, begging to be rejected. Despair comes from the absence of a center. When a man is not anchored in himself, he seeks the other to balance himself. But this lack is quickly noticed, and the attraction, which should be subtle and growing, dies suffocated. The Stoics understood this perfectly. For them, calmness in the face of situations was more than a virtue. It was a life strategy. Cato was not shaken by insults, losses, or rejections. He remained firm because he had already accepted that everything external is temporary. And here's the key: when you accept that someone's love, attention, or desire aren't guarantees, but bonuses, you stop acting like you depend on it to be happy. You don't chase because you don't have to. This detachment confuses the female mind, accustomed to men who despair of attention. And it is exactly this unexpected reaction that creates attraction. Because suddenly you are not like the others, and what is rare is desired. Not because of the intensity of the effort, but because of the serenity that few have the courage to cultivate. Most men believe that showing emotion is proof of authenticity. But there is a brutal difference between feeling and being dominated by what you feel. And this is where many get lost. By reacting impulsively, emotionally uncontrolled, they end up becoming fragile in the eyes of any woman. The Stoics did not preach coldness. They taught dominion. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, betrayals, and profound losses, and yet he wrote about serenity. What he understood was that a man who overreacts is in the hands of the world, and those who are in the hands of the world are not free. When you despair of a response on WhatsApp, when you feel angry because you've been left in a vacuum, when you become emotionally attached to someone who doesn't even really know you, you're telling the world that you have no control. And this is an invitation to be ignored. Attraction dies when man loses control of himself. A woman may even sympathize with her emotion, but she will not be attracted to it. What truly creates desire is the presence of a man who does not bow down to his own storms. Being emotionally stable is more seductive than any catchphrase. When you are the safe haven of yourself, you also become the haven for those who observe you. And that's the kind of strength that no appearance can buy. The truth is hard. If you don't control your emotions, someone else will do it for you. And whoever controls his emotions controls his life, including seduction. Some men simply walk into a room and all eyes turn. They don't speak loudly, they don't try to show off, but something about them is magnetic. This something is called internal control, a kind of calm, confident energy that is born of self-reliance. The Stoics called this ataraxia, the unshakable peace that comes from within. It's not that these men don't have problems. It's just that they don't let problems shape who they are. This silent force is irresistible because it is rare. In the field of attraction, this is clearly manifested. A centered man does not try to impress. He listens more than he speaks. He is not in a hurry to please. And precisely for this reason, its presence becomes intriguing. He doesn't give everything away. He doesn't need to convince anyone. This presence creates curiosity. Women wonder what is different about him. Why doesn't he react like the others? Why does it look so complete? And this curiosity, when mixed with tranquility, turns into genuine desire. You don't need money, status, or perfect looks to be like that. He needs only one thing: mastery over himself. The kind of dominance that makes you say no when everyone else says yes. That makes you stay calm even when everything seems to come crashing down. That's what makes a man remembered. Not for the strength he demonstrates, but for the firmness he carries even when no one is looking. Before you even say a word, your body, your posture, your gaze are already transmitting messages. And as much as you try to disguise it, emotional fragility is something that is felt in the air. Women intuitively perceive this. The man who seeks validation, who lives according to the other's response, who is destabilized by any attitude, he doesn't need to say that he is insecure. He conveys that. And the consequence is immediate. The attraction dissolves. Epictetus said, "What matters is not what happens to you, but how you react to it." And this is the basis for becoming unshakable. You can be rejected, ignored, tested. But if your reaction is centered, firm, and serene, you change the dynamic completely. A woman tests because she wants to feel what's inside of you. If the first emotional obstacle knocks you down, you have shown that you are not a man who sustains a real relationship. She may not know how to explain it rationally, but she will feel that something is wrong. On the other hand, the Stoic man responds with composure. He doesn't rush. He does not overinterpret. He doesn't run after it. And because of this, his presence begins to generate something rare, emotional respect. When a woman feels that a man is doing well regardless of herself, she begins to wonder, what's so solid about him? And that's where the game changes. Emotional weakness drives you away. Inner serenity attracts. We live in an era where everyone wants to show everything: routine, feelings, thoughts, achievements. But in the invisible game of attraction, the key isn't in what you display, it's in what you keep. The mystery seduces. Predictability bores. The Stoics understood the power of silence. They didn't talk too much. They watched. They acted with intent. Being irresistible is often about what you don't reveal right away. It's about leaving room for the other person's imagination to work with. When you surrender everything, your attention, your intentions, your emotions, in the first moment, you kill the enigma. You become obvious, and everything that is obvious loses value quickly. But when you stay in your world, unhurriedly, you become unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul remains invincible when it contains itself." This is true for life, and it is true for love. A man who holds back is not cold, he is deep, and depth takes time to explore. It is not about manipulating. It is about valuing yourself. You don't reveal everything because your world is too valuable to be handed over without criteria. And that turns their presence into something that women want to discover, not just consume. Mystery attracts. Excess suffocates. And in the well-dosed silence, the most intense desire dwells. Most men live as if they need a woman to feel complete. And that's exactly what keeps them away from what they want. Because the real secret of magnetic men lies in emotional self-sufficiency, a force that comes from within and does not depend on anyone. The Stoics argued that the source of well-being is always internal. A man who is happy in his own right, who is at peace with his own thoughts, who does not despair of someone's presence, such a man is rare. And what is rare naturally attracts. When you're emotionally self-sufficient, you don't gamble, you don't pretend, you just don't have to. And this absence of need creates a powerful energy, which many women have never experienced. They feel that they are facing someone who cannot be manipulated. This does not mean isolating yourself or being cold. It means that you are already so complete that the presence of another person is a bonus, not an urgency. And that's exactly what makes them want to be part of your world. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who is content with himself is truly free." Emotional freedom is the new masculinity. It is what separates the men who beg from the men who are desired. Do you want to be loved or needed? Because when you don't need to, you become what no one can ignore. There is an invisible line that separates men who go unnoticed from those who are remembered for life. This line is not in appearance nor in money, but in the quality of presence. And that quality is born when you master yourself, as the Stoics taught. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. But his greatest achievement was not external, it was internal. He wrote more about mental discipline than about war. Because I knew that the real battle happens within us. And the men who win this battle become unforgettable. An unforgettable man doesn't have to be the most handsome in the room. It needs to be the most centered. When he speaks, he conveys calm. When he is challenged, he does not react with anger. When he's rejected, he remains at peace. This consistency is magnetic. The Stoics called this virtue, living according to reason, not emotion. The closer you get to that state, the rarer you become. And in a world full of impulsiveness, rarity is irresistible. Being unforgettable is a consequence of living with purpose. It is not a question of doing more. It's about being more aware of every step, every choice, every thought you cultivate. And that over time becomes your identity. You don't have to be perfect, but it needs to be in control. And those who control themselves conquer a permanent space in the memory and in the heart of those who cross their path. While you believe you need a woman to be happy, you move away from the kind of man she truly desires. Because female desire does not flourish where there is dependence. It's born in the field of self-sufficiency. When you're complete on the inside, you don't beg for attention. You don't run after those who ignore you. You live your life so fully that anyone who enters it realizes their presence is a privilege, not a necessity. This may seem arrogant to some, but in fact, it's humility with direction. You don't feel superior. You just recognize your own worth and live by it. This is Stoicism in its most practical form. Epictetus said, "Wealth does not consist in having great possessions, but in having few needs." And this also applies to love. The man who needs less is the one who is most in demand, because it transmits freedom. And freedom is sexy. When a woman feels like you're not trying to win her over, but rather living your truth, she feels something new. A deeper, more instinctive type of attraction. Because, for the first time, she realizes that she is not in control. And this inversion is the secret. The man who doesn't need a woman to be happy is exactly the man she wants by her side. Not out of dependence, but out of admiration. Few men understand the true power of emotional detachment. They confuse this with coldness, with detachment. But in fact, detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of internal domain. Stoic detachment is about accepting what you don't control. Accept that a woman can leave, that she can change her mind, that she can ignore you. And even then, you remain steadfast because you don't depend on it to feel good. Imagine a man who, even in the face of rejection, does not destabilize himself. He goes on with life as if nothing had changed. This is not arrogance. It's emotional clarity. And this clarity is the most lethal weapon in the art of seduction, because what is emotionally unshakable is seen as valuable. The one who does not react impulsively conveys confidence. And confidence, when combined with mystery, turns into an almost inevitable attraction. Cato the Stoic was known for his imperturbability. Nothing could take him off track, and even his enemies admired him for it. Today, in a world where everything is reactive, To be unflappable is to be exceptional. If you want to be admired, don't beg. If you want to be desired, don't depend. Practice emotional detachment and notice the power that comes when you don't need anyone to feel whole. Have you ever stopped to think that the pain you feel when you're ignored, rejected, or misunderstood does not come from the fact itself, but from the way you interpret it? This is one of the greatest lessons of Stoicism, and one of the most liberating. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are disturbed by something external, the pain does not come from the thing itself, but from your perception of it." In other words, it's not what happens to you that hurts you, but what you think about what happened. In the field of seduction, this is fundamental. A simple delay in a response can lead to hours of suffering, not because it really hurts, but because you attach an emotional meaning to it. You feel rejected, forgotten, small. But all of this is on your mind. When you change perception, you change emotion. A stoic man learns to observe his thoughts before reacting. He wonders, is this really serious? Or am I just interpreting with neediness? This awareness avoids unnecessary suffering. True emotional freedom comes from understanding that you don't have to control the world. You just need to control how the world affects you. It makes you lighter, more confident, more present, and paradoxically, more attractive. You can't control others, but you can control yourself. And this is the difference between the man who lives in constant suffering and the man who walks steadfastly even in the face of uncertainty. There is a moment in every man's journey when he stops chasing, and it starts to attract naturally. This moment happens when he stops seeking approval, when he understands that his value does not depend on anyone's validation. The Stoics lived to please their own conscience, not others. They knew that seeking outside approval is a prison, because you are always vulnerable to the opinions, silence, and rejection of others. But when you live in coherence with your principles, you become free. In the field of love, this freedom is felt as power. The woman realizes that you are not trying to convince her. She notices that you feel good with or without her presence. And this arouses an instinctive curiosity. Why doesn't he need me? This curiosity turns into respect. Respect becomes attraction. And attraction, when it is born from the recognition of emotional strength, is much more powerful than any game of seduction. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just need to live with so much presence and authenticity that people feel like being there for you is an opportunity, not an obligation. And when you reach that state, something magical happens. You stop seeking because it finally becomes the prize.